Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the space where we say, I can sleep. I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves and staying cool because it is definitely hot where I am. We are now reaching the consistent 90 degrees. It's not as bipolar as it was last month, but now it's consistently hot. So now I can officially say that we have entered summer. Whee! But let's focus on the positives, which is we are here now. And as per usual, if you are enjoying these readings and would like for me to continue doing these readings, you can show your support through leaving me likes, leaving me comments, sharing my stuff, and following me on my platforms like Spotify at iKenSleep, YouTube at iKenWin, TikTok at iKenWin, and Instagram at officially.iKenWin. Now let's start our ascension into Heaven Officials' Blessings, Chapter 14, Admiring the Flower Through Red Clouds, A Heart Full of Affection, Part 2. Even though he was reprimanding Shilian, his tone was exceptionally gentle and patient. As he explained, Huachang supported Shilian's hand with his own again, but this time, his left hand found its way to Shilian's right, the one covering the lid. He instructed softly, like this. And just like that, the backs of Shilian's hands were enveloped by Huachang's palms. When skin touched skin, Huachang's hands felt temperate like jade. The exquisite silver vambraces that Huachang wore were as cold as ice. And yet, his movements were careful, and he never allowed them to touch Shilian's skin. His hands guided Shilian's and shook the black wooden gambling cup in a rhythm that was neither hurried nor slow. Once, twice, thrice. There was a crisp, rattling sound of the two dice colliding and entangling with each other as they bounced inside the black cup. Even though the shakes were gentle, Shilian could feel waves of numbness traveling from the backs of his hands along his arms, spreading through the rest of his body. As he shook, Shilian lifted his eyes to sneak a peek at the other person and realized that Huachang wasn't looking at the gambling cup at all. Instead, he was watching him intently with the corners of his mouth curved up. Shilian couldn't help but return that smile, but he immediately controlled himself when he remembered the crowd of humans and ghosts watching him from above and below. He lowered his head and diligently studied the gesture that Huachang showed him. Like this? He asked. The smile curving Huachang's lips deepened. That's right. Just like that. After Shilian shook the cup a few more times, full of hope, he suggested, why don't you take a look? Shilian lifted the lid and saw two white dice at the base. It was 2 threes. Rolling 2 threes was already an impossible feat for him. It was like a gentle spring breeze had brushed past Shilian's heart, and he thought, could I have actually learned the trick? However, as shocking as the outcome was, 6 was still slightly less than 11. He cleared his throat and admitted, I'm sorry, I've lost. But Huachang replied, don't worry, this round doesn't count. I'm teaching you right now. Try again. At those words, Lang Chenqiu and Shi Jingxuan gawked. The crowd of ghosts in the hall also stared with their mouths agape. Then they started to grumble. What's with Changshu? I thought he was going to show him who's boss, but he's actually teaching him for real? How can you not count this round? Can you even gamble like that? If this doesn't count, when will it count? Looks like Changshu really is in a good mood today. Huachang quirked his left brow, and the Kupriers standing to the side immediately shushed the crowd. Everyone, please quiet down. In the blink of an eye, the hall went silent again. Although no one dared speak, their stares were more intense. Huachang chuckled and softly whispered words of encouragement into Shilian's ear. again. It might have been because there were too many humans and ghosts packed into this gambler's den, but Shilian felt his face starting to heat up. Okay? He shook twice more. This time, when he revealed the cup, it was 2 4s. See? Isn't it a little higher this time? Hua Chang asked. Although Shilian felt that something was off, he still nodded his head. Yes, it's a little higher. Hua Chang encouraged. You did well. Keep going. With those words of encouragement coming one after another, for some reason, giggles could be heard all around the hall. Judging by the voices, it appeared they all came from female ghosts. Shilian also couldn't figure out what exactly constituted the correct posture. At first, he simple-mindedly paid close attention to how Hua Chang positioned his hands, how he managed the pace, and how he grasped the cup. But now, he was letting Hua Chang's hands lead him and shook the dice blindly. As he shook, a suspicion in his mind grew stronger and stronger. Could someone be teasing me? Lang Qinqiu, who had been watching from above, probably felt the same and couldn't help but speak up. You! Stop shaking the cup! He's obviously playing you! There's no such thing as a correct posture! He must be cheating! Hearing that loud, boisterous voice, Shi Jingxuan covered his face again. The ghosts below shushed heartily, and a rain of dice was hurled at Lang Qinqiu. They jeered at him loudly. Ignorant child! Stop talking! So noisy! We're just getting to the exciting part! That Dao Zhang's rolls get higher each time he follows our Changshu's teachings. That's the undeniable truth. That's right. What do you know? Lang Qinqiu was furious. You unruly, bald-faced liars! Ah! He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, and his face turned bright red. A couple of female ghosts below him had brutally yanked on his dangling belt and scolded him aloud. Zhao Didi, stop causing a ruckus. If you keep spouting nonsense, us Jie will pull off your pants. Lang Qinqiu had never been threatened like this before, and was so angry he was rendered speechless. You! Getting beaten to a pulp by a mob of ghosts would have been fine, but having his pants pulled off would be a dreadful embarrassment for a dignified martial god like him. Immediately, Lang Qinqiu didn't dare to say anything more. Shilian looked up and saw the other god sending him eye signals with all his might. It was both hilarious and pitiful, so he could only lower his head. Shilian looked at Hua Chang and pleaded in a small voice. Sanlang. Hearing his tone, Hua Chang chuckled. Leave him be. Let us continue. Shilian gave up and, once again, held the cup and shook twice. As expected, this time, he got 2 5s. The crowd cheered harder at this, and their teasing of Lang Qinqiu grew more frenzied. Did you see that? Higher than last time! But Shilian had already realized that Hua Chang was just fooling around with him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was sure that there was indeed no such thing as a correct posture, and to someone like him, any posture would be incorrect. From here on, he might as well give up on any hope of transforming his luck. Just as he was about to give up and expose himself on this last shake, Hua Chang stopped him. Wait. Shilian could feel the hands covering his pressing down a little harder, so he stopped moving altogether. What's wrong? Hua Chang asked, half jokingly. I don't believe this Gaga has mentioned what will happen should he lose. Hearing him call Shilian Gaga, Shi Jingxuan and Lang Qinqiu both wore complicated expressions on their faces. The crowd of ghosts also felt massive shivers run down their spines, and there were even a few who were so shocked that their heads dropped to the ground. It was a little embarrassing to say, but because he was in such a hurry before, Shilian hadn't considered his side of the bet. At first, he considered also betting 10 years of his life, but a heavenly official's lifespan was quite long, so 10 years probably wasn't worth very much. Money or treasure? He didn't have any. Spiritual power? He didn't have much of that either. Shilian surprisingly couldn't think of anything he could bet with at the moment, so he could only ask advice from the owner of the gambler's den. Do you think there's anything on me that's worth betting with? Hua Cheng chuckled at his question. Anything's fine. What have you got on you? Shilian pondered briefly, then lightly coughed and told the truth. I only have a half-eaten bun with me. Hua Cheng burst out laughing. Even though he laughed, no one else dared to do the same, even if they wanted to. When he finally settled down, Hua Cheng nodded. That's fine. The bun will do. The moment he spoke those words, they not only shocked the crowd of ghosts, but the croupiers at the gambling table as well. Since the opening of this gambler's den, there had been countless inconceivable bets made. Organs, lifespan, emotions, abilities. But none were as inconceivable as the one today. A half-eaten bun. Even Lang Chin-Chu couldn't contain his surprise, and he sputtered, dumbfounded. What? What is the meaning of this? Are you saying that I'm only worth a half-eaten bun? The crowd snickered and laughed. Someone called out. What's wrong with the bun? You're getting off easy, so shut up! Shilian could tell that the sparing voice belonged to Shi Qingxuan, who was hiding among the crowd of ghosts. Just as he was caught between laughing or crying, Hua Cheng coaxed him to continue. Come. It's the last round. Don't be nervous. I'm not nervous, Shilian argued. The two stayed like this, hands still touching, and shook a few times. Even though Shilian was truly not nervous, there was still a light sheen of sweat on the hand sandwiched between the cup and Hua Cheng's palm. Finally, the movement came to a stop. It was time for the reveal. He drew a small breath, then opened the lid. The dice were 2 sixes. Shilian let out a sigh of relief, aware of what had transpired, and he gazed up at Hua Cheng. Hua Cheng arched his brows. Oh, I lost. Even though he acted serious when he admitted his loss, he didn't sound the least bit sincere. The crowd below was engulfed in silence. There had been people grumbling earlier. If this round doesn't count, then when will it count? Now the answer was clear. It counts when this guy wins. That level of generosity was almost insane. Even so, no one dared to comment. The croupier from before took the black wooden gambling cup and raised it up high. Congratulations to this Gongji! You have won this round! Everyone generously gave face and cheered. Changshu showed us a perfect loss! Beautiful! Wasn't the winner personally taught by Changshu? He won because Changshu taught him well. That's right. Learning the correct dice rolling posture today really opened my eyes. So much benefit gained. So much that it'd take more than 10 years to reap it all. Listening to the voices of the swarming devils from all around, Shilian couldn't help but smile. Seeing his mirth, Hua Cheng also chuckled and gave the red curtains a flick. At that point, Lang Chin-Chu called out from above. Since you lost, you should be letting me down. Hua Cheng continued to stare at Shilian, his smile unchanging and his gaze not moving from Shilian's own. He simply lifted his hand and gave an easy wave, and Lang Chin-Chu came crashing heavily down. Shilian winced at the loud crash, Shi Qingxuan couldn't risk exposing himself, so he couldn't rush forward. Instead, Xilian turned and bent down to check up on the god. "Are you okay?" Lang Qinchu crawled to his feet and dusted himself off. "I'm good, thank you. He probably wanted you to go up there so that he could cheat and make you lose. But thank goodness you won." Xilian thought, "You're completely mistaken. If he didn't go easy on me, even if the whole world turned to ash, I would still never be able to win you back." Just as he was thinking that, there was suddenly a crisp tinkling of bells, and the sound was followed by gasps of shock from all around. Xilian turned his head to look, and it turned out that Huachang had finally emerged from behind the red silk curtains. In his previous youthful form, Huachang always sported a slightly crooked ponytail, but now, his raven black locks tumbled loose over his vibrant red clothing, and an evil aura radiated from his handsome figure. Only a thin braid on the right side, tied at the end with a red coral bead, brought a hint of mischief to the mix. The vambraces were silver, the straps on his boots were silver, the belt was also silver, even the long, slender scimitar that hung at his waist was silver, its curve smooth and peculiar. Just like that long, slender blade, the man himself was slender and tall. He was leaning against the parted curtains with crossed arms and a faint smile. "Gaga, you've beaten me." Xilian obviously knew what had happened and said in resignation, "Please stop teasing me." Huachang quirked his brow. "I'm not. Why would I?" Down below, the crowd of ghosts were bustling with excitement, bubbling like boiling water, each of them thrilled that they whispered among themselves. "Changshu changed his skin again today? I'm dying. His new skin is killing me. It's so tender and firm." "What do you mean dying? Old hag, aren't you already dead?" It would seem that Huachang never showed his true form in public and also changed skins frequently. None of the ghosts in Ghost City knew what he really looked like, and they assumed that this must be another of his fake skins. Only Xilian knew that the one standing before him was the genuine Crimson Rain sought flower of legend. Xilian stared at the young man in red. He wanted to say something, but countless eyes from all around were focused on them, and Huachang's attitude was incredibly ambiguous, like he knew him but also didn't. Xilian didn't know if Huachang could so publicly admit their acquaintance in Ghost City, didn't know if he was acting this way intentionally, so he couldn't say much other than, "Thank you." "Why thank you?" Lang Qinchu demanded. "He owns this place. He bore ill intentions from the start." Xilian replied under his breath, "Your Highness, please stop talking and let's get out of here." If they were to stick around, he really didn't know what else would come out of Lang Qinchu's mouth. Considering the mission at hand, Xilian couldn't afford to stay long. He glanced at Huachang a few more times and pushed Lang Qinchu toward the exit. But as he was doing so, Huachang's voice called after him. "Hold it." Xilian stopped in his tracks and looked back. The chatter among the crowd started up again. "Changshu, you can't let them go like this. That guy's suspicious. Look how strong he is. He's probably not as simple as he seems. If you ask me, they need to be kept and interrogated." "Exactly. Who knows if he's a spy sent from whatever organization to cause trouble on our turf?" That last sentence was a dagger to the heart. They really did come from the heavens, but their intent wasn't to cause trouble, but rather to simply investigate the situation. Xilian wasn't sure if Huachang had seen the spiritual light that Lang Qinchu released in his moment of peril, and he wasn't 100% certain Huachang would let them go if he did see. Xilian was growing increasingly anxious, but the tone Huachang spoke in was laid back. Shouldn't you leave the prize behind? Shilian was lost. Prize? Lang Jinchu put himself in front of Shilian and questioned warily. Are you going back on your word now? But Shilian thought. Sanlang would never go back on his promises. Could he mean something else? With that, he stepped out from behind Lang Jinchu and asked, But didn't I already win the bet? It's true that Gaga won against me just now, Hua Cheng replied. But don't forget, you lost a round before that. Shilian blinked. But you said not to worry because it didn't count, right? Even though it took some really thick skin to say something as embarrassing as, it doesn't count when I lose, only when I win, Shilian still said it. Hua Cheng replied, Of course. The rounds when you bet against me didn't count. What I'm referring to is the first round that you gambled at the long table. It was then that Shilian finally remembered. Hua Cheng was referring to when he was testing out the lowest he could roll and ended up throwing double sixes instead. Lang Jinchu spat darkly. I told you he had ill intentions and wouldn't let us leave here that easily. I will not be sealed again. It sounded like he was already prepared for another fight and was eager to jump at the chance, but Shilian quickly pulled him back. It's fine, don't be nervous. We don't need to use our fists. On the other hand, Hua Cheng tilted his head. How about it? Gaga, do you admit your loss? Willing to bet, willing to lose. Other than obediently conceding his defeat, what could he do? And so, Shilian nodded. I admit it. Hua Cheng extended his left hand with an open palm. Then give me the promised prize. The promised prize? After some hesitation, Shilian reached into his left sleeve, felt around, and fished out a half-eaten bun. Unable to look Hua Cheng in the eye, he bold-facedly presented it. Did you mean this? Truth be told, when he took out the bun, Shilian felt the thick skin he'd grown over his 800 years crumble a little, unable to hold up. The ghosts in the hall had long since been stricken speechless and were quietly watching this play out. Never mind that it was Changshu's first time betting against someone, and the stakes were a half-eaten bun. Maybe Changshu was just having a bit of fun. But to think that Changshu had actually, in all seriousness, pursued the person to ask for this bun? Speechless. There really was nothing to say. There were even ghosts who couldn't help but spin an absurd theory. Either there was some sort of enormous secret hidden within that bun, or this person was actually Changshu's older blood brother. Hua Cheng, however, merely grinned broadly as he received the bun, gave it a look, and waved it around in his hand. I've claimed my prize. Seeing that he actually took it, Shilian didn't know what to say. A good moment passed before he responded. It's cold, and maybe a little hard. It's okay. I don't mind, Hua Cheng said. Such an answer left Shilian unable to respond, and since he had already said all he could, he turned around and headed toward the exit. Earlier, when the ghosts of the gamblers den parted for him, it was simply because he was the first to go up, and that made him a brave warrior. Now, when they parted for him, their eyes were filled with admiration and curiosity. After Shilian left, he could hear the ghosts behind him ask, Changshu, where are you headed now? Hua Cheng replied lazily, I'm in an agreeable mood today. To Paradise Manor. At his response, the hall erupted into festive cheers. Shilian couldn't help taking another glance back. Hua Cheng had also turned around, still with that half-eaten bun in his hand. He gave it a playful toss and casually took a bite out of it. His gaze locked on Shilian as he did so. Shilian's step faltered at the sight. For some reason, he suddenly felt that sticking around here a moment longer would be a very bad idea. He quickened his pace, running out and dragging Lang Chinchu in tow. The two left the gambler's den and ran like madmen down a long stretch of the road, almost knocking over several food stalls along the way. Just when they had finally arrived at a quiet, far-removed alley, Shi Qingxuan popped up and reunited with them. Shi Qingxuan fanned himself with such vigor that his hair whirled wildly in the wind. That was close. So close. My God, that was so scary my face turned as white as those ghosts. Xilian's heart was racing too. Perhaps he ran too hard. Lang Chinchu spoke up. Yeah, Lord Windmaster, your face still seems very pale right now. Shi Qingxuan felt his face and smiled. Is that so? This isn't from fright. It's just what I was born with. Ahem. Xinqiu, you're a martial god who watches over a territory, you know that, right? How could you act so rashly? We're in the middle of the ghost realm here. If you were caught and exposed, the word going out would be that heavenly officials in disguise were infiltrating the ghost realm, disrupting the peace between the three realms with their bizarre behavior. How could we explain that to the emperor? Lang Chinchu hung his head obediently and admitted his wrongdoing. I'm sorry. I was too rash earlier. Then he raised his head. But those gamblers were crazy. If that man had flipped the cup, whether he won or lost, the outcome would have been terrible. Either his rivals or his daughter would suffer the consequences. It was that anger that made me crush the cup. Shi Qingxuan chided. Even so, you shouldn't have jumped in by yourself, right? Lang Chinchu blinked. Then what should I have done, Lord Windmaster? If I didn't charge in, no one else would have. His question was so genuine that Shi Qingxuan didn't know how to respond. He tapped his fan lightly against his temple. Well? Xilian smiled softly. Forget it. Lang Chinchu looked at him. Xilian continued. I think that even if His Highness Tai Hua was caught, he wouldn't have confessed his identity no matter how he was interrogated. But to prevent others from picking up any clues from your words, it would be best for your Highness to be prudent and avoid capture going forward. Lang Chinchu nodded. Okay, I understand. Shi Qingxuan said. Alright, let's not talk about this anymore. Oh, right, Your Highness. This, Your Highness, made both Xilian and Lang Chinchu turn their heads at the same time, and Xilian clarified. Oh, I meant the elder. Xilian rubbed his head a little dejectedly. Elder? Alright, I am a little older, but not by that much. Why is it that when they talk about me, they always make it sound like I'm a grandpa? Shi Qingxuan continued. Your Highnesses, have you two met at the Palace of Divine Might? If not, let me introduce you. This is the Crown Prince of Yang'an, Lang Chinchu, Martial God of the East. This is the Crown Prince of Shenle, Xilian, a heavenly official who collects great commendation from the Heavenly Emperor. Even though Shi Qingxuan stumbled and didn't say the words, Xilian knew exactly what came after. Collects scraps. What else? Since the words were abruptly swapped in mid-sentence, there was no time to adjust the grammar, only clumsily change the course of the statement. When Lang Chinchu heard, however, he looked at Xilian and asked in amazement. So you're that Highness who ascended 3 times? It appeared that Lang Chinchu really had slept through the entire meeting at the Palace of Divine Might, and didn't even remember who he was. Anyone else saying that to Xilian would no doubt mean it in a sarcastic comment. But because the question came from Lang Chinchu, Xilian wholeheartedly believed that this child genuinely thought ascending 3 times was just a bit curious. His eyes twinkled. Yes, that would be me. Lang Chinchu responded. Thanks so much for helping me earlier. If you hadn't... He remembered something and hurriedly looked down and started to tuck his belt in, tying it properly, fear still lingering. He obviously didn't think much about the history between the kingdom of Shenle and the kingdom of Yong'an. Shi Qingxuan seemed to think that introduction was good enough. He turned to Xilian. Your Highness, I thought that Crimson Rain Softflower knew you? Why did he act like as if he didn't back there? Lang Jinshu finished tying his belt. Was that really Crimson Rain Softflower? Was that his true form? Xilian didn't even have time to open his mouth before Shi Qingxuan piped up. How could it be his true form? Huachang has thousands of disguises, and no one knows what his true form looks like. Last time when I was in Banyue Pass, he looked similar to his appearance today, so this must be a fake skin too. It's fake, all fake. Yet Xilian could still remember that night at Puqi Shrine, when Huachang had told him, the next time we meet, I'll greet you in my true form. He thought to himself, it's real. But of course he didn't say that out loud. Everyone was so sure that Huachang must be wearing a fake skin. Being the only one who knew it was Crimson Rain Softflower's true form was like learning an extraordinary little secret. Then he thought, Sunlang's appearance doesn't look that much different from before, only a bit older and taller. That means he was pretty much in his true form the first time he met me. Strangely, that made Xilian feel a little happy. Shi Qingxuan added, everyone says Huachang is a strange character, and that really seems to be true. It was obvious that he was going easy on you, and yet he pretended in all seriousness not to know you. Who knows what he's up to? Could it be that he wanted us to drop our guard? Xilian choked and coughed. Just as he thought, anyone could tell Huachang was going easy on him back at the gambler's den. But rather than saying he went easy on him, they might as well just say outright that Huachang was literally letting him win. Lang Jinshu was the only one who couldn't tell. He frowned. Did he go easy on him? Why? The other two patted him on the shoulder and decided with great tacit understanding that it was best not to explain it to him. They left Lang Jinshu standing there by himself to mull over why Huachang would go easy on Xilian, and whether it was because the two knew each other. Xilian and Shi Qingxuan turned and walked off. We've been discovered now, I guess, Xilian said. What's our next plan of action? Switch our disguises and try again? Personally, I don't think doing that will change anything. After His Highness Taihua's fight back there, Ghost City will probably strengthen their security. Shi Qingxuan replied. To be honest, I had considered the possibility of us getting exposed, but I never thought it would happen this soon. Xilian sighed. I know. What's done is done, Xilian said. Since our cover is blown, you might as well just walk in with confidence and do this openly. Xilian could vaguely guess what he had meant by openly. Sure enough, Shi Qingxuan explained. If we want to smooth out the lie, then the only way is to have you go find Huachang and tell him that you came here specifically to visit him. He knows that you're a heavenly official, right? If so, then it's believable to say that you've brought a couple of your little friends from heaven with you. Yet unexpectedly, before Xilian could answer, Lang Jinshu cried out at the suggestion. No! Shi Qingxuan looked at him. Why not? Lang Jinshu replied seriously. Your Highness Shenle, do you really know Crimson Rain Softflower? I heard your conversation earlier. It seems you two are friends. Xilian nodded. Then of course that plan is not feasible, Lang Jinshu said. Even though a Ghost King is no saint, the fact that he went easy on you must mean that he sees you as a friend. And one should never deceive a friend. Shi Qingxuan could feel an oncoming headache. My God, Jinshu, you stubborn mule! Yet Xilian laughed and nodded. It's good, what His Highness Taihua said. Lang Jinshu beamed. You agree with me, right? How is that right? Shi Qingxuan protested. The three of us are heavenly officials, you know. If we report back empty-handed, people will no doubt say that our success rate is even lower than the Palace of Ling Wen's. And what an utter embarrassment that would be. Xilian grinned, but just as he was about to speak, a terrible ruckus erupted from behind them and made the three turn their heads. Just outside of the alley, a mob of nefarious creatures ran past with raised fists, shouting, "Where's that brat with the bandaged face? Where is he?" Seeing the other two gods alarmed, Xilian reassured, "Don't worry, they're not after us." Just as the words left his lips, their ears were pierced by a shrill, deafening cry.